So for those that have never used Slido before, join slido.com or www.slido.com, hashtag BHM 2024. Do you have the link, Lydia, that we can put in the chat? We want this to be, like I said, interactive, but it would be great to know, is there such a thing about light privilege? Great. So you can see 2 people have responded. And this just is a quick icebreaker. By background, I'm an OD professional and we love our icebreakers, just to get you all warmed up. Thank you, Lydia. So you can see it in the chat. But yeah, so far everyone thinks, yeah, everyone agrees there's a light. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of white privilege. There's many different privileges, but there's light skin privilege, which is slightly different because it's quite broad, that light skin privilege. Okay. Any problems getting in? Do let us know. Wow. Right, everyone, maybe. Okay. Can we move over, Lydia, to the second question? We've got a good amount of response. 42 people, in fact, all of you. The second question, which should be on your screen, it may not turn up here on... Oh, I can see some, now that the full screen is open to me, I can see old colleagues. So for those that don't know me, I used to work in the NHS, spent 16 years in the NHS. So it's really lovely to see some amazing, lovely faces and names.
Mavish, would you be able to share that?
Yeah. I'll just have to go in. The second question was, oh, no, hang on, bear with me. What we will do, I'm actually just gonna, let's leave the second question because I think it can come up later on. I'm just gonna go straight into the introduction of the speakers because I am conscious about timing. So don't worry, Lydia, and let me introduce our first speaker. So we've got 3 speakers in total. One, I'm gonna start off with Romain, who we're going to hear from very, very soon. So Romain Mohammed, there you are, is the founder of CEO of Diversify World, a consultancy and recruitment agency established in 2023. And although it's relatively new, Romain has actually had 15 years of experiences in corporate recruitment. And he strongly advocates for education at the foundation of businesses in order for them to really implement and support the inclusivity agenda. Romain is widely recognized for his expertise with a particular focus on anti-racism, culture, class, and social mobility. He's a respectable voice or respected voice on national media outlets, is an influential writer, public speaker, and he has also, I think you've got a book, haven't you, that's on its way to you. It's in the process of being, sorry, bear with me. It's in the process of being, published. Has it been published? Oh, the authors, the others we became.
Yeah, the others we became. Identity, home identity and belonging in post-war Britain.
Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant, amazing, congratulations. And despite sort of Romain's sort of professional background, the thing that I met Romain about a year ago, and I love the fact that, yes, he has his professional background, but there's more of a deeper element to Romain. There's an historical element to Romain, and he actually holds a prestige position of Aziz Foundation Scholar at the Birkbeck University of London, where he researches and explores the history of race, racism, culture, and ethnicity. So that you'll be hearing from Romain. So Romain, great to have you here. We then will be also hearing from our panel members, and we've got Banji Adiwumi. And Banji used to work in the NHS, but currently she is the director of EDI at the University of Greenwich. She recently joined Greenwich after spending about 3 years at the University of Manchester. I was going to say Westminster. I used to go to Westminster, but University of Manchester, where Banji led and developed various initiatives, in particular supporting the main real big focus was on the EDI strategy. And of course, prior to that, Banji was in the NHS, which is where I met Banji. And she headed up the EDI team for one of the largest hospitals here in London, which was Bart's Health Hospital. So in total, Banji has around 30 years experiences of working in public sector. She has successfully led, as you can imagine, various projects in the inclusivity space. And it was in 2022 that Banji was recognised on the Queen's New Year Honours List for her services to the NHS. And so that's Banji. So it's a great privilege to have both Romain and Banji here. And the last speaker, but not the last speaker, but the most I think I recently met Rob. I say recently, it was this summer, and absolutely I was looking through his Rob, your bio, and I thought, I'm not going to be able to get everything on. I'm not going to be able to say it all without eating into the time that we've got. So really quickly and very fast, I'm going to walk through his bio because it is incredibly impressive. Rob is a Londoner, born and bred here in London, in Paddington, and then moved eventually to Brent. He began his career in the Ministry of Justice back in 1983. And I was very, very small. I'll tell you, I was wearing nappies at that time. So it was a very long time ago. He worked in the Ministry of Justice and spent a long time in the Ministry of Justice, to be honest. He led many projects. He's an accredited cultural intelligence facilitator. And while in the Ministry of Justice, he actually spent a lot of time working in the race space. Founded the Ministry of Justice BME Staff Network, Proud, became the first elected chair of the Civil Service Race Equality Network, which now you will know it as Civil Service Race Forum. He eventually became the chair of that particular forum, which, like I said, it still exists. He's held various roles, did some great work within Ministry of Justice, and moving sort of fast forward to 2018, he earned his OBE on the New York. I really need to stop saying New York. By the way, I spent a lot of time in New York. That's why I keep referring to New York. New Year's Honours List. He was recognised and was a winner of the Investing in Ethnicity's Workplace Hero Award. He's also been recognised as at the HR magazine as one of the 50 most influential thinkers, and the D&I Leaders Inspirational Leaders list. He recently, after all that experience, especially in civil service, not recently, he's been doing it for some time, but he is the founder of a consultancy, Crystal Alliance, all about inclusivity and really supporting organizations on that inclusivity journey. He's also a co-author as well. So we've got a number of authors on our panel, our speakers amongst us. And the books are The Key to Inclusion, and he co-presents a podcast, Unfinished Businesses. So those are our speakers. I'm absolutely honored to have them here. We're so lucky to have them all here. And I would like to now just hand over to Romain to kickstart our session. Romain, over to you.
Thank you, Mevish. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all on the call today. It's a great turnout. Happy Black History Month. For those that don't know, Black History Month in the UK started in 1987. Black History Month in the US started in 1920, so about 67 years before Black History Month in this country started. I think one of the disclaimers that I'd like to make is that Black History Month we shouldn't be celebrating Black history or any kind of cultural heritage month. For example, South Asian Heritage Month. That shouldn't be limited to a month or a week. We should have Black History Month as well as all the other months fully integrated into our national curriculums. But unfortunately, we don't. So we need to have months like this and settle for this for now. One of the things that I'd like us to speak about today is on our understandings of, obviously the theme is colorism, but our understanding of colonialism and and specifically the Black British context. But before we start by looking at the Black British context, I think there needs to be some level of context setting. It's always important to set context. And before I do that, let me just set my timer because I'm conscious that I've only got 15 minutes to speak. So I'm going to try and say as much as I possibly can in that 15 minutes without speaking too fast. So timer set, right. So I'm just going to share my screen. I think I have permissions to do so, should have. Let me just share my screen. Where do I do this now?
If you can't let me know, I might need to make you a host, Romain.
I think I can.
Brilliant.
I think I can. Right. So can everyone see this page? You can see this. It says black and on this page, right? So one of the things that we need to start to understand when we're looking at colorism is that colorism is an aspect of racism, right? Colorism is an active tension and legacy of slavery and colonialism. But when we start to deconstruct colorism, we need to first deconstruct the ideas of race and racism. And that's why I've got this picture on the board. We have on this slide, we have black and white, right? So these are terms of color, the terms of art. There is no one in this world who's actually this color, and there's no one actually in this world that is actually this color, white, like this, okay? So then why do we then classify people as black and then classify as white? There is no genetic DNA thing that supports this, because race is, as we know, is a social construct. It was a construct that was set up in the 18th and 19th century by people like John Frederick Blumenbach, Carl Linnaeus, and a number of other people, Robert Knox, and a number of other scientists. Okay, and these people gave race and racism its roots through biological determinism and pseudoscientific racism. And these ideas are some of the legacies and tensions of colonialism that still impact us today. But when we think about race, a lot of us, we all have our biases, and I was biased and initially to think that the further we went back, the more racist people were. I thought that, you know, race was or racism and race, the way we look at it in our modern ideas and our modern concepts, is an old thing. But actually, the more research I did, I realized that it's not as old as we think it is. Actually, it's far more recent. So just gonna go through some of these slides. So what is race then? We're gonna look at race, we're gonna look at colorism, but what is race? Because colorism finds its roots in race and racism. It's the way in which it's a legacy of a hierarchy, a racial hierarchy. Okay, but where does it?
Sorry, Romain, can I just ask, are you able to put the display on screen slideshow? So it's a bit more larger on the screen for our participants. Is that possible? If not,
Is that better? This is a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, let's continue. I don't want to disrupt your time or your flow, but for everyone, what we'll do is I'm hoping we can share the slides. Is that okay at a later stage, Romain?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Brilliant.
So what is race then? Race is, as I mentioned, it's a social construct, and it categorizes people based on physical characteristics, things like skin color. And within skin color, and not just facial features, but also hair texture. These are some of the key identifiers and factors of colorism, okay? As I mentioned, none of these categories have any biological or genetic basis, okay? There's more diversity between, and this is a study by one of the American Genetic Society, that there is more genetic division between dog breeds and some other animals than there is between human beings. Actually, there's more genetic variation within some so-called racial groups than is outside of them. So this is not a valid way for us to categorize human biological diversity. And if the further we go back, we also can look at concepts of early human difference. So there was always ideas and concepts of human difference. And if we look at this very interesting image here, this is an image from it's called the ancient Egyptian table of nations. And here we have an Egyptian here, we have a Nubian here, we have an Asiatic here, we have a Libyan here. So there's always been concepts of human difference. There's always been concepts of different shades, different color, different pigmentation. And if we look at throughout all historical periods, there is this understanding and recognition of difference. However, that difference only really takes root and has its strong identifiers as the way we have it now in the 18th and 19th century, based on colonialism and slavery. And if we think about slavery and colonialism isn't some far off concept or experience that happened, thousands of years ago. When we think about slavery, or the slave trade started in 1526, and by the 1730s, the British, who we're going to look at, this is the context that we're going to look at, specifically the British, was the biggest slave trader. And the slave trade ended in 1803, but slavery didn't end until 1833. Okay, so it's not that long ago. And one of the things that one of the legacies of slavery, the continuations of slavery, was indeed colonialism. And we know that colonialism was first instigated and first kind of started in 1884 with the Berlin Conference. And that's where the European nations, France and Germany and Great Britain, Spain and Portugal, first sat down and carved up Africa. And not just Africa, it was, South Asia and other parts of the world. And they carved it up and they took what parts that they wanted for themselves. And this was a part of the British became the British Empire, as well as the French Empire, etc. Okay, so within these ideas within these notions of race and racism that took root within this period of time, we have colorism as a structure that was set up to separate people based on racial differences. And even within the racial differences, for example, we have people who were lighter skinned, darker skinned. And when we look at that, I'll show a picture. This is a really interesting picture, actually. I don't know if we can all see, I hope we can all see this picture, but we can see ignorance, superstition, brutality, vice, barbarianism, slavery. We can see all of these different things, all these different stones, and then we see at the top here this idea of civilization. And I think within this image is a perfect image that sums up colorism and the racial hierarchies that slavery and colonialism actually enforced. Okay, symbolism is so important, and if we look at symbolism throughout the ages, symbolism in the medieval period, in the early modern period, but even symbolism in the Age of Enlightenment, and in symbolism during the periods of slavery and colonialism, it tells a story. And this image here, sorry, my light's just gone off. Apologies. This image tells a story. What it's saying is that people of color, and there are a number of different groups here, and you can even see people, you can even see the name on some people. So this person here is Chinese, this person here is from India, okay? Yeah, this is a British colony, a colonial person from the British. This person represents the British Empire, okay? And they're actually up further than the American person, who has on his back other savages. These were called noble savages. That's how they described people of color at the time, noble savages. Okay, and these noble savages, the only way that they could be civilized is in their proximity to whiteness. Okay, so the noble savage was superstitious, they were brutal, they had vice, they were arrogant, they had cannibalism. These are all the ideas, this narrative that was portrayed about this noble savage. But they were almost childlike in their approach. But the only way they could be brought into civilization is by their proximity to whiteness. And that proximity to whiteness came in the form of slavery and colonialism. Okay? So in that proximity to whiteness, the lighter skinned you were, the lighter your skin, meant that the closest or the closer you were to whiteness. The darker your skin meant the further away from whiteness you were, so the more savage you were and you became. And the only way you would be able to potentially eradicate that is succumbing yourself to what became Europe or global standards of beauty, which were as close to white you could become, but also by submitting yourself essentially to something called the 3 C's of colonialism. And the 3 C's of colonialism were Christianity. So to become a Christian might dissolve some of that barbarian or savagery and bring you closer to not just European beauty standards, but European ideas of civilization and enlightenment. Okay, and so we have Christianity, we have commerce, which is the colonialism, and then we have civilization. So these were the 3 C's of colonialism. So by being a part of all these things, so engaging in European commerce or succumbing to European commerce, accepting colonialism, accepting your subjugation and subjugated rule by European powers, by embracing Christianity, you would then become a civilized person. So, sorry, let me just get my, let me just see how much time we've got. We've got 3 minutes. So this image, I think, is really, really, really important. And, you know, one of the things about the narrative, this year's theme for Black History Month is redefining the narrative. But one of the things that we need to think about, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. One of the things that we need to try and take a step to think about is, well, what is the narrative that needs to be redefined? So we know about slavery, we know when it started, we know about colonialism, we know when it started, we know the impact of those things, which is the racial hierarchies that was set up. And within those racial hierarchies, so, you know, you have, you know, the closest to white you are within the racial hierarchies, the more civilized, and we know we've discussed all of these. In those themselves, so-called races, which are a social construct, there is colorism. So can we see how the external, quote unquote, scientific racism, which enforced the racial categories, still in itself found its way into internal social construct ideas of race. So being a dark-skinned Black man is somehow more negative because it has those connotations, because you're furthest away from whiteness. So it's negative than being a light-skinned Black man or more of a fairer-skinned Black man or Black woman. Or Mevish very insightfully mentioned that even within the South Asian heritage, she is one of the darker people. So there's that almost nuance in terms of between races and within races that colorism still finds and takes root. But why redefining narratives is so important is because as much as we need to redefine the narrative of colonialism, we also need to redefine this narrative of being in Britain and what that means for non-white people in Britain. And the narrative has been that since 1940, the real diversity in this country only really started in 1948. And before that, Britain was this primordial homogenous place. Okay, this primordial homogenous place that actually Britishness was found in its root from Anglo-Saxonism. But the further we go back, and we'd expect to find this, and this is the ideas that give the far right validity when they say go back to your country, you don't belong here, this is not your place, you're not from here. So these ideas give the far right and xenophobic ideas validity. But the further we go back, we can see that actually there's always been a presence of Black and Asian and non-white people in this country from 33,000 years till now. There has been a constant presence. So as much as we need to redefine our ideas about, I've got 4 seconds left, I'm going to stop now. As much as we need to redefine our ideas about colorism, what colorism is, and understand that it's a pension and legacy of slavery and colonialism, that is as much within races as it is outside of specific races. We also need to understand that Britain isn't this mono-ethnic, mono-racial, mono-linguistic island that we've been led to think, and we've been led to think it is. It has always been a place of diversity, as needs to be our understanding and conceptions of color and race. That there is not one primordial homogenous color or race or ethnic group that takes precedent over anyone else. So with that, I'll stop. Yeah, it was really insightful and interesting to speak to you all. I hope you took something from it. It's always hard to speak for 50 minutes when there's a lot to say, but yeah, I think I've done my best. But yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.
Romain, thank you. And, understanding our history is how we then understand how we move forward. So, and also understand the present moment. So, and that's what it's really helpful to have that knowledge. And it's great you can see, hopefully, Romain, you can see the love in the chat. And, I was blown away by the knowledge that Romain had. And thank you, Romain, for that background. I want to shift it up a little bit and invite our other amazing speakers, both Banji and Rob, to really explore it a little bit more in today, what it means. And if I can just invite Banji, first of all, for you to come in. We're going to spotlight you and really just hear from you. What does colorism mean for you? What have you taken away from this particular topic?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mavish. Romain, thank you for that presentation. Rob, a privilege presenting alongside you. And hello to everyone on the platform, those I've known for a while, Sharon, Rashid, Sam, and many other colleagues, and those I don't have the time to mention your names. I acknowledge you all. So in the few minutes I have to the question, what does colorism mean to me? And some may wonder why a Black woman of a certain age speaking to this subject. I ask myself the same question, acknowledging Romain's academic findings and research, and of course, Rob's experience in this space. And I thought, what story could I tell? Acknowledging my Nigerian heritage and the privilege, I say again, privilege of having lived in both, of course, the United Kingdom and Nigeria, there are two sides to the story. So as Mevish shared hers, I smiled because there's this, well, it's not a solo incident, but those who are of Nigerian heritage or know about Nigeria, in those days, you would commonly split Nigeria into 3 main parts, i.e. the north and the south in 2 parts, the east and the west. So based on my surname and indeed my maiden name, I should be recognized as one from the western part of Nigeria. But I'm here to share with you, especially at a younger age, and some may recognize the name Ngozi. No disrespect to anyone who's called Ngozi, but please do some research. People didn't believe I was from the West. And when they called me Ngozi, I don't know why I'm laughing, it was more in a negative manner, i.e. placing me in a region different to where I'm actually from. And when you look at the definition of colorism, whatever dictionary you wish to look at, the academics would say it's discrimination against individuals due to their skin tone, but typically among those from the same ethnic group, which I do agree and say that was a childhood experience I can share with you. But just moving on from telling that, I would say, little story, as it were, there is also something in terms of generational trauma, race-related trauma, and being specific trauma as a result of how you've been treated negatively due to your color. And looking at the workforce, be it in the NHS, be it in higher education, there is matters that I personally wouldn't say is colorism, it's racism. That's just calling a spade, and how discrimination has an impact on an individual. And without saying too much just yet, because I know we've got some questions that we need to respond to, I want to mention a book which some of you may have read called The Vanishing Half. I listened to it not in the whole, but on audio. And it's a book by Britt Bennett, just looking to make sure I say the name properly. It's very much, it's fictional story, but it speaks to colorism and how deep cutting it can be, affecting families, affecting loved ones, even to the point, as a colleague has mentioned on the chat, people using products even at the expense of not having enough money for food, just to make sure that they have the skin tone to be able to fit in. But it speaks to something deeply, which is about the human nature to want to have a sense of belonging and taking steps to ensure that they do belong in whichever group that they find themselves. I'm just going to close at this point, because part of what I hope to be able to share this afternoon is the need for self-care, and recognize that each and every one of us is unique in the way we are, and indeed the shade of our skin tone. Thank you.
Thank you, Banji. Can I invite Rob, please, to come in and share from your perspective, what does colorism mean for you?
Catch. Thank you, Mevish, so much. Your smile tells me that I'm audible, so let's crack on with that. I do want to say, though, Mevish, thank you so much. Thank you, Lydia, for all of the work beneath the waterline, for putting this on, what I often refer to as critical conversations in a safe space. Thank you so much for doing this. I want to thank Romain for giving me more homework, for having me join the queue for yet another book about to be published. And whenever that launches, Romain, if I can help in any way, I mean in any way, I will be your usher. I will be whatever it takes to get that book into as many hands as possible, because I can't wait to have more of your narrative into this world. Banji, love you to the bone. You know that, my sister. I'm in a book club, and we read The Vanishing Half about a year and a half ago. And we were blown away, and we actually arranged an outing to discuss it. There's only 6 of us in the book club, but we had a massive conversation about that. I don't know how much time I've got, Mevish. Just get your shepherd's crook ready and pull me off, because as you know, I could speak for Jamaica and for England, all over. So for those dear friends on this call, they know me well. You know who you are. I love you all to the bone. Thank you for helping me through certainly the challenging times that I've been through of late. I hear, Romain, on those 3 C's and was somewhat familiar with them. And it's funny, I deliberately, Mevish, didn't write anything before arriving here, because I know I've got so much to say about this subject, but I didn't want to overly engineer it. And I was scribbling down as Romain spoke, because I came up with not an alternative 3 C's, but another 3 C's. They don't challenge the 3 C's because they are what they are. But alongside the 3 C's given to us by Romain, and certainly in my case, raising my awareness when he talked about the 3 C's of colonialism: Christianity, commerce, and civilization, I just scribbled down cathartic, critical, and compassionate, because I think that's what this conversation is. It's cathartic because it offers us a chance for healing. Banji spoke about that just now, about the space that we can create to heal. It's critical because I link it to critical race theory. And it's the very thing that for most of my 38-year career in the civil service, they were trying to ban me from embracing, ban me from engaging, because therein lies the answer. I was listening to Lord Woolley yesterday evening. He was doing a keynote speech around leadership that inspires and empowers at the Anglia Ruskin University. And Simon spoke about the fact that after 400 plus years of African enslavement, a universe was created that gave rise to racism and gave rise to practices, policies, and procedures that would perpetuate that racism. I'm drawn to what Ta-Nehisi Coates says in his book, Beyond Me, when he talks about race is the child of racism, not the father. Race is the child of racism, not the father. You see, racism needed an excuse to exist. It needed to provide explanation and reasons for why people would behave in the way that they did. And when I was growing up, there were a number of comments about my personality, my character. But in reference to that largest organ in our body, the epidermis, the skin, I was often told, and I didn't work it out until a bit later, I'm uncomfortable in confessing that, but I sense I'm amongst friends, so I'll share and say that when I was told I had high color, I walked away with that as a compliment. And I walked away with that as something that meant I was better than, certainly better than those with a darker hue. Little did I know that it was an extension, a manifestation of the racism that we had grown up in. I'm a Jamaican born in Paddington. That confuses some of my white friends. But I know, as Marcus Garvey taught me, if a rabbit is born in a stable, you don't call it a horse. If a rabbit is born in a stable, you don't call it a horse. And so my understanding of my roots, even though I was perpetually told, sometimes by dear loving aunts and uncles, Rob, you have high collar and you have good hair. Remember my tip to you, Mevish, make your next one about hair. You'll get triple the amount of people here. I just want to say in closing with this opening statement, I am alongside all of what Romain shared as a clear and positive truth about our history and about how we arrive at this point. I want to just close with a suggestion that's given to us by the wonderful Toni Morrison. And it's something that I'm challenged by on a daily basis because the heart tugs at these issues. Not as recently as yesterday morning, I was working with Kraft Heinz, and that follows the recent campaign where they mistakenly left out the presence of a black father. Some of you may have seen that advert, and some of you may have seen the media coverage on social media. But I want to leave with a thought that Toni Morrison offers us. Racism is a distraction. Racism, it's real, it exists, and we need to combat it. Absolutely, don't get me twisted. But racism ultimately, as is colorism, is a distraction. We need to transcend it. We need to move beyond it. And I ask that we find ways of doing that while still coming together to have these honest, safe space conversations about how we can best do that and look after ourselves. Keep loving your hearts and share your smile. Thank you for listening to me.
Amazing, Rob. Always amazing to hear from you. But please, you're going to be hearing from Rob a lot more, and as well as the other speakers. And let's now move up a notch and really sort of focus on from a workplace point of view. So I'll share a experience I had. So at the time that George Floyd was murdered, I was leading the EDI agenda in a hospital, in a workplace that I was in at that time. And this is not specific to NHS, what I'm going to share with you. It's within the workplace. But my experience was, what it was in the NHS. And I remember leading, and as a South Asian, with my own experiences, but in that particular context, I was trying to, have more of the conversations about what individuals, what groups, what society was experiencing as a result of the death of George Floyd. So I was, grabbing hold of my South Asian colleagues and bringing them all together. And I started hearing stories from the South Asian community. And that South Asian community very much it conflicted with my personal values, and my personal values being the fact that South Asians have actually stood on the shoulders of Black people. If it wasn't for the Black movement, especially when addressing the racism that we know exists, and we've heard from, you know, we've heard from all of our speakers, Romain, Banji, and Rob, we have actually, as South Asians, have moved. We've benefited. And I'm not saying, and I'm generalizing here, but what I do understand, and it was really disappointing to hear, was when my South Asian colleagues in the workplace were saying, no, George Floyd's death, that's the Black issue, it's not our issue. But then if you look at it from a triangular point of view and in the pecking order of society, white is at the top and Black, unfortunately, is at the bottom. And we South Asians are in the middle. There shouldn't be a separation based on what has been shared. So my question now is directed at our panel members, and it's a free flow, panel members. And I welcome our participants to mention comments, anything that comes to your mind. We want to hear from you. Please do include it in chat, but we will also call upon you a bit later on. But I was quite keen to hear from our panel members from a work perspective, and in the workplace. When we talk and we think about colorism, how does colorism influence our interactions and opportunities in the workplace from your perspective? And I am going to actually address that question to Romain. So how does that colorism influence our interactions and opportunities within the workplace from your perspective, Romain? Please do come in.
Thank you, Mevish. And just Banji and Rob, fantastic presentations. It's great to hear from you. In terms of how colorism impacts my experiences, because I think I was always, and I still am to an extent, a lot less, but when I was working in corporate spaces before I set up my own organization, I was always hyper aware of those legacies of slavery and colonialism and things like colorism. I was always super aware. I was super aware of it since I was a child. I remember the first CD my mum bought me was Tupac Changes, which is a narrative of social, political, and economic narrative, observation of foreign policy and observation of police brutality, state negligence, state violence, etc. So from a young age, I was always very, very hyper aware. That translated into school, that translated into university, and that translated into the workplace. And I think a lot of the issues that we have is around exposure and representation. So when you don't see, and when I don't see someone who looks like me on board level of an organization or in a senior leadership team in an organization, it makes me think by inherently that, well, can I get there? Am I going to be blacklisted? No pun intended. Am I going to be able to get to this place that I have not seen, and I can't see anyone else that looks like me in this place? And if I do get there, how much of myself am I going to have to give away from my authentic self? Just one really interesting fact as well. People ask me why I'm a manager, and I'm not going to bring this back to football. I'm just going to give a very interesting anecdote which speaks to the idea of how important representation is. People ask me all the time, why are you a Manchester United fan? And what I say to them is, well, when I was growing up, the first team that I actually watched, it could have been coincidentally, but the first team I watched was Manchester United. And they had two players who looked like me in terms of the same complexion. They were Andy Cole and Dwight York. They were the superstar dream team, striker team, superstar, right? So I thought as a young boy, 5, 6, 7 years old, wow, maybe, just maybe I could be like them. They look like me, so maybe I can get to there. Maybe I can be like them. And that's why I started supporting that team. So some of the issues that we have in our workplace is the lack of engagement, because there is things are done tokenistically and we don't see ourselves in those places and can't see ourselves in those places. So that's how I think that colorism affects the workplace, is that lack of representation and lack of exposure.
Great, thank you, Romain. There's so much that I would love to get into that dialogue of exploring it a lot more, but we don't have that advantage. And because I have 3 questions in total, but I want to address my next question to Banji, and I'm trying to spotlight you. I'm actually trying to spotlight you before I even ask you the question. No pressure. But the question I have for you, let me make sure I've captured it properly. Yes, because this in particular, the reason why I was thinking about this question is just because of the amount of work you've done, in particular within organizations, about EDI strategies. And so my question to you is, what are some ways organizations can work towards addressing colorism as part of their D&I work? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it also actually builds on what Romain had shared with regards to representation. Because many a times what is deemed to be a priority by a selected few may not necessarily be the need of the majority workforce, as it were. In which case, for colorism to be addressed as a priority within an organization, it would take representation to, in fact, put it on the list of priorities that needs to be dealt with. But having said that, and I'll just say a little bit about aspects colorism, and again acknowledging some of the comments, because some of it comes from ignorance, and you do appreciate that there are instances in our lives where you overcome that ignorance and you seeking to step into your own space. And what do I mean by that? An individual who has, for instance, bleached for the best part of their life and come to recognize the need to desist from such a practice. Of course, there will be telltale signs. And I'm imagining a nurse, for instance, just picking that as an example, who's dressed in such a way that the sleeves is up to maybe just the top of the arm, and what that might have on their own, may I dare say, dignity, because whether we acknowledge it or not, microaggression or even macro isn't necessarily the words that are being said to one. Sometimes even the non-verbal does come across as what's the word, as a microaggression or an ism of the like. But sticking to your question as to what could organizations do, that's where I would like to emphasize the need for organizations to seek to create a sense of belonging. It was a project at the University of Manchester, and I'm seeking, hopefully, with the help of colleagues on the ground, that we do the same even more where I'm at the moment. Recognizing that the world we're in, sadly, there is black-white duality. Romain has said so much about that already. And where each and every one of us is on such a constructed, I'll call it a line, you could place yourself either towards black or towards white, as it were. And unless there is, I would say, pride and ownership of our uniqueness, sadly, we'll be drawn to one end or the other in wanting to fit in. So what could organizations do? How much are we putting into valuing difference, recognizing and valuing difference, whereby somebody like me, somebody like you, somebody like each and every one of us sees that we are recognized for the uniqueness that we bring to the organization, despite the shade of melanin that we do have and carry as an individual. How much in our strategies are we ensuring that inclusive recruitment practices are embedded whereby never would it be that an individual's chances of getting to a particular position is dependent on the shade of their color, the shade of the color of their skin. I could go on a bit, but key representation, definitely. Listening and understanding the diversity that we have and that it is our strength. And of course, co-creation, whereby I listening to the story of another, recognizing the needs that need to be met, especially in an ever-changing world that you and I are serving in. Thank you.
Thank you, Banji. I love that. That spoke to my heart. Thank you. Rob, it's your turn now. And I want to shine a light on intersectionality. Given the fact intersectionality, we're more than one protected characteristics and it is really important we talk about intersectionality. So my question to you is, how does colorism intersect with other forms of discrimination, particularly in the workplace? But if you've got something else you want to share, please do.
Well, if I could start there, thanks for that, Mevish. As you were speaking with the questions earlier, what came to mind was some of my own journey through the workplace, and Banji had me bring a few bits of this to the fore. As I mentioned earlier, I had a rather long career in the civil service, and I started, as a teenager. I actually, not to run with the football analogy, but I wanted to be a footballer, and I thought I was Clyde Best. Some of us won't know who he was, bless him. He played for West Ham, but I supported the team that was local to me, Queen's Park Rangers, and I still do, much to my challenge. But when I then thought about real employment, because I was never going to be good enough to be a footballer, I leaned towards the police service, and sliding doors had me end up in the criminal justice system. And I started work in 1983, and I have to tell you, and I'm going to confess, some of my friends on the call have heard me talk about this, but for the first decade, Mevish, I wasn't black. No, I wasn't black. For the first decade, I was colorless. I was without a color, because I believed completely and wholeheartedly in meritocracy. I believed that all I needed to do to maximize potential, if I wanted to, because for the first couple of years, I just played around. It was a playground. I love people. I get my energy from people. I still do. And so I was just looking for a night out here, a day out there, and even within working hours, just having a good time. And so for the first decade, I was colorless, and I was rooted in operating with a deep belief, and a part of me will always believe in meritocracy, will always want to believe that to win a job amongst a competing field, you just have to show yourself to be better. But about 10 years in, I realized something, and I started on a journey that would lead me to where I am now. But I realized that when decisions were being made about what happened in the office, there wasn't anybody like me in that room. Some of my friends were in that room. Some of my colleagues that I'd shown how to do the job. You get me? They were in the room. And I said to myself, this don't feel right. There's something going on. There's something not right about this. Why can't I get it? What's wrong with me? Remember, meritocracy was what ruled my thinking. So I said, no, Rob, you have to double down. You have to really show that you have to really put yourself forward now. It took me 4 attempts, Mevish, to get my first promotion. 4.
Wow.
In the days when, back at the first attempt, they had a system whereby if your interview was so bad, they would say not to be seen for 3 years. They put you back in organizational prison. I was trapped without knowing it.
Laugh. I'm so sad. You have to laugh.
Without knowing it, Mevish. I didn't know it. I didn't know the rules of the game.
Yeah.
I was so convinced that meritocracy was the way, carrying my big self with my high color into those spaces that said, I can show you that I'm good enough to do that job.
Mm.
So you see, you know, the colorism that I took into the workplace said that, well, you know, I'm not as dark as them. I've got high color and good hair. So I can get, and it's the strangest thing. And I'm truly blessed. I'm truly blessed to have bumped into some people that have helped me, to have worked alongside some people that have helped me. And to this day, dear friends that will be alongside me. They're on the call. Sharoni Kotaria, Rashid Ogalari. These are great people that know how to bring the best out in people. And so I want to say, in answer to some of those earlier questions, that there's a journey that I've been on. And as Zadie Smith says in her wonderful book, White Teeth, hindsight is always 2020. It's always in 2020, no matter where, you know, these 60-year-old eyes have got me to, I can see clearly when I look back. Johnny Nash, I can see clearly now the rain has gone. Because I understand the universe that was created as a result of African enslavement. I understand and have an insatiable appetite to learn more about critical race theory. It is the antidote to the condition we find ourselves in. Remembering that racism, stroke, or should I say slash, pun intended, colorism is a distraction. It isn't that we should ignore it. I'm not saying that. Don't get me twisted. It is there. I am blessed to be the father of 2 children. I am married to someone from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Colorism is rife in that space, in those places, because people have taken it on without questioning. What is it about the apocryphal Willie Lynch speech? How do you divide a people? Some of us on the call will be familiar. I'm saying that what we can do, what we are such a capable people, that we can transcend all of that and we can understand and assert what needs to happen. And so my appetite is around learning the skills and the approaches that will generate that sense of belonging. My sister Banji's put it so beautifully, how we can create that sense of belonging. And I want to see an increase in cultural intelligence. I want to see us come network. That's one of the reasons I ended up focusing my career around the building of staff networks, of ERGs, inspired by Sharon's fantastic book, The Incredible Power of Staff Networks, of redefining the space. Yeah, the map is not the territory. We can move beyond that. That is how capable we are. And that's what I'm dedicating however much more time God gives me on this mortal coil, to being that individual that is part of that group of people, that critical mass that can transform the space in which we all live.
Amazing. I'm not as quick to get the round of applause, but I just feel so, if you're all on this call and you're hearing what I'm hearing, I'm incredibly not just inspired, but it's more, these are the deep conversations that's so important to have. We need to understand this, and it feeds, from my perspective, it feeds my soul. I'm hoping it feeds your soul. And it's been great learning and hearing, especially for someone who's not from the Black culture. You know, my husband's Black, my kids are beautiful Black girls, and I'm still learning. So, you know, especially for my amazing panel, well, my speakers today, you've sort of fed my soul on and intellectually informed me about what it means for you from your perspective. So this has been great. I want to now just open it up to the participants. And I know, and I'm terrible at this, and hence for any of you that arrived a little bit later, this is my first event, so I'm just trying to navigate through that with the amazing support of Lydia. But we do have some questions in chat, but I'm happy for us just to spend the next 10 minutes to hear from you. So I know Rashid, lovely to see you, Rashid. You've got your hand up. Please come in. Would love to hear your views. Oh, you're on mute, Rashid. Let's spotlight you as well.
That's a real rarity that I'll ever be on mute. But thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, to say huge congratulations to you all for putting on this event. Really well, it was really wonderful just to hear you all speak. Thanks, Mavish. Thanks, Lydia and Sam in the background. Thanks, Banji. Thanks, Romain. Thanks, Rob. Really important topics, really important themes, and themes that are often very, very, very difficult to talk about, even amongst our own community. So it's really glad to hear that these topics are being spoken about here. And particularly colorism is one that's very loaded and can be very, very, very challenging. And I so agree with, I just want to pick up on the point that Rob made a couple of times about that racism is a distraction. And I completely agree. It's true, it's real, it needs to be tackled. But so often it keeps us exactly where it is that we're at. And other people are beneficiaries. When I'm running lots of leadership courses and I hear all sorts of stories that, often for the global majority backgrounds, I hear all sorts of stories very true about lots of stuff that has gone on. I can see how without care, we remain where we are rather than moving forward and being really strategic and tactical about how it is that we move forward and how we're supportive of each other and compassionate. And there was something that also that Banji said that I just want to touch on that is so important. I think that the challenge within organizations is actually how much ultimately do we actually value the difference? That's the bottom line. How committed are we? How much do we actually value, and to what degree does that show up, especially in organizations like the NHS that many of us have had experience, and others, where the organization is so diverse it would fall to its knees without people who look like all of us on this particular call. So there's a real challenge in here is what is it that we're actually doing? Do we really value people that are diverse? And that speaks to your point also, Mavish, about the intersectionality, because the intersectionality is the key to the door in many ways, because that's going to be the way in which we are all compassionate to each other and we all see the magic in everybody else. So thanks very much for everyone for putting on this event. It's been a real joy. So well done. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, and thank you. It's been great hearing from you. I think I would actually like to just invite anyone else who has a question. Lydia, you'll have to help me because I'm thinking, there was one question that was proposed in relation, I'm not keeping up with the chat, so I'm really sorry. I get easily distracted, by the way. So Lydia, can I just call upon you whether there was anything within the chat that really, we've got a hand up. So can I invite Paul to come in? And Paul, before you start,
thank you very much.
No, go ahead.
For inviting me to a really wonderful talk from various people. I think, to be quite honest with you, as I just said, colorism is fueled by ignorance, and it's moved along by cowardice. People feel that they somehow can relate to the ruling structure, so to speak, because the features are aquiline and their complexion is somewhat near to the masses' complexion, so to speak. And it's that level of cowardice that is still alive today. And that's why we would always have this attitude of colorism and the negative effects it has on our community. Sad to say, at the moment, I have a very strong argument with a couple of people from the South Asian environment. Now, I don't know if people remember this, but I left the army sometime in 1971. And I worked in London for STC at the time. We worked on a project called the London Special Purpose Unit, whereby we were building an exchange, and it was security involved there. Well, sad to say, we had a lot of Salvation warmen and war women there. And at the time, I don't know if people know, but the Salvation women weren't known to be coming up to work in industry. And when most of them went back home to Tooting, the brothers from the Caribbean contingent were the ones who formed a kind of protective guard to them working in Tooting, because the National Front was very much focused in Tooting. And we protected mainly the women coming from that area. As years went by, we found that there's been a strong contingent of South Asian, and I'm sorry to say South Asian people, who really and truly have had negative attitudes towards people of Caribbean origin. I think this needs to stop, because we are not going to take it. You know, we didn't take it from the Europeans. We sure as hell ain't going to take it from the so-called ethnic minority Asian. And I think this is an issue that we have to face, and we don't want to face. Right? And it's something that really and truly is going to come to a head sooner or later. Right now, as we speak, in about an hour's time, I'm going down to a certain area to contact a salesperson who works for O2. And let him know that when I left the office yesterday, I heard the negative remark he made to some of his white colleagues. Now, I'm going to say that to him in front of his white colleagues to let them know that I do know what he's saying, what he said, and let them know in certain terms what I think about the remark and what I think about him as a person. I don't have this kind of fear. Yeah.
No, first of all, thank you so much for sharing. And to be honest, you've just shared what I've experienced as a South Asian, which has really, from my perspective, upset me. There's some amazing, you know, as part of, I love my community, I love my South Asian community. It's my identity, it's who I am, but it doesn't mean I agree with aspects of some people's views in relation to this. And I love, and that's the reason why this conversation is so important, because when it comes to, you know, I go back to why this is important. When we look at racism in general, and I'm really glad that we are talking about racism / colorism, because it is all part of one, but we have to bring colorism to the forefront, because we need to have this conversation about the differences of views between the South Asians and the Black people. And having that dialogue.
May I add very quick, because I know a lot of people are ready to come in here. I am doing psychology. I'm doing my degree in an open degree at the Open University, and two of my modules is based on psychology. It's also based on working within the mental health arena. And I was fortunate enough to be working with this young lady who is on the mental ill health section. And I've written a play as part of my final assessment, a professional play, looking at mental ill health from her point of view, not the point of view of the NHS, but from her point of view. And I know what I'm talking about, because I've actually worked with her and I've seen the way she was treated. Right, unbelievably bad. You know, she's had she's been coerced in all kinds of ways. You know, emotionally, sexually, and these are all by people who had the role of protecting her. The NHS was absolutely useless in offering her any form of assistance. That is the reality that we have to face on a day-to-day level.
Yeah, and it's a reality that we need to talk about. We can't hide from it, because we have to bring it in the open to be able to then collectively move forward to a place of understanding. And I think I don't know who was it. I think was it Rob or Banji? I'm not sure, but the point that was made about co-creation. And what I took away from that, and that whole sense of belonging, is actually we want something better. We want to live in a place that we all feel belonged, irrelevant to the color of our skin. And therefore, let's have these conversations, bring it to the forefront, because we don't have these conversations. And awareness is important. So thank you, Paul. I am,
well, thank you for having this platform. This is great. Thank you.
No, it's great to have you. Just to know, you know, I know we can't see you, which is fine, but we hope that when we do a second one, I get to see you. Oh, there you are, Paul. I didn't want to pressurize you for putting yourself on screen, but it's been great hearing from you, because it's these conversations that are important, not a way of, you know, suppressing anyone or saying a particular group is a particular way, but it's more about seeking that understanding. So thank you so much, Paul. And I am just conscious we've got 10 minutes, and I'm similar to Rob. I can talk and talk and talk, but I'm just conscious.
Thank you, Rob.
No, thank you. And I'm conscious I don't want to do so much of the talking. But what I want to do is just kind of start entering into the sort of the closing section of today. So you can leave at 2. I have noted that there is a lot of questions, stroke comments, and there's some great reflections, suggestions, but also questions that have been raised. I will, myself and Lydia will walk away and work through that for 2 particular reasons. One, we'll come back to you with an answer to your question, and we will share those questions with our speakers. And speakers, you've got homework, because if you can answer it from your perspective, I would love to be able to share that. Equally, the second reason is for those that have commented, engaged, you know, people like yourself, Paul, minus the, and Rashid as well, actually, but minus the speakers, and everyone that's shared your views on chat. I will be sharing, let me grab it. I will be contacting you and giving away some little goodies, which includes magazines, and I've got some great posters as well. So that will happen post this session. But I want to get into, like I said, the closing. And I'm going to invite my lovely speakers to really give a few words in terms of key reflections. But before I do that, I want to share a bit of my key reflection. Do you remember at the beginning I said this is incredibly personal to me? And it's personal from the perspective that, you know, like I said, I'm a South Asian. I was the darker one in the South. In my I have a lot of sisters, so I was the darkest in my clan at home, and it talks to that sense of belonging, because for me, we know the skin is the largest organ of the body. It defines us as identity, because it's something you see. So I was the black child, and you can imagine the connotations that sat with that. The thing that was the most upsetting and traumatic for me was, as a young, very small girl, when your mum bathes you, I was always put into the bath, and I hated bath time, because I was unfortunately scrubbed with a pumice stone. And those, I'm sure you know, pumice stone, not good on, it's quite hard on the skin. It's ruthless, it's harsh. And yeah, I would walk in as a South Asian, I would come out relatively bruised and red, just because I was too dark. You can imagine when I married into a black family, a black culture, I was, you know, I was a lighter, the acceptable color. And what I took away from that experience was actually it's the identity. When I was young, I didn't know what my identity was. I think I lost my identity. Like, who was I? And that meant, when I think about that, I was a quiet child. I people pleased, and I actually lived in the shadows for a very, very, very long time. And it was only when the murder of George Floyd happened, and it was only, you know, a few years ago, you know, it wasn't that long ago. So, and I've grown up since then, but it was only when the murder of George Floyd happened that I felt that that was a catalyst, a personal catalyst for myself, where I would say I was able to connect with my identity, embrace the fact that I am South Asian, and that's great. And I'm great in terms of all those different colors that we have. And my reasons for sharing all of this is that one thing I've taken away from it, I feel now a lot more belonged. I feel now I have that identity, and that goes a long way in how I come across and how I am in this world. And that has actually supported, you know, how I show up and the decisions I make. But one thing I've realized is no matter what your skin color is, we're all beautiful. We've got beautiful skin. And we're beautiful in all those shades. So that's my reflection, and I love the conversations we had. So I'm going to move over to my lovely speakers. I'm going to start off with Romain. Just really quickly, what are your key reflections and that you would want to share with all of us as we close? Romain, come in, please.
Thank you very much, Mevish. And I just would like to say thank you, Mevish and Lydia, for putting on this event. You said it was your first event, but it definitely didn't seem like it. It ran smoothly. And I thank you for all the participants who joined, who commented, who engaged. It's a very, very important conversation, and a conversation that needs to continue. I think that one of the lessons and stories that we can learn from the generations before us is that they were able to, without nullifying ethnic, religious and ethnic differences, they were able to unite and have trans ethnic solidarity. Okay, so when we think about periods, I'm not going to take too much time, but periods of the 70s and the 80s, there was something called political blackness. And political blackness was really important because what it did is it united everybody under one grouping to an extent, whilst not nullifying ethnic and religious differences and racial differences. But what it did is it gave us a sense of a block, okay? So when we would protest or when we would go to demonstrations, the Grunswick demonstration, for example, in West London, and a number of others, we would go there in solidarity, okay? And had that unity. And I think that's definitely one thing that we can take from the past, in the fact that just because the person being killed by the police or the person being killed in whatever place it is, or just because the issue is 10,000 miles away, it doesn't, and it's affecting people that don't have the same name as you, language as you, religion as you, color of skin as you, it doesn't negate solidarity. It doesn't negate the fact that you should be in solidarity in sense of community with the oppressed group. Oppression is oppression wherever it is, aimed at whoever it is. And I think, you know, it's them today, it might be you tomorrow. And I think it's that type of transnational solidarity that is missing and that we need to go back to.
Amazing.
So I think that's my reflection for today. But yeah, appreciate the opportunity to speak, and yeah, I hope we can continue having these conversations.
Amazing. Thank you, Romain. Unity and solidarity. I love it. Banji, please, your key, just in a few sentences, what you taken away from today?
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And I know the time is fast spent. I want to end by reading a few lines from a poem I wrote some time ago. Dressing for the work requires some thought, not necessarily the literal suit, dress, bag, or boot, but to think about the space you're about to enter is as important as dressing for the weather. So what is the workplace like today? I hear someone say. It depends upon the environment, the institution that you're part of. Sadly, in institutions, some that I can see, they are a reflection of the society of you and me. It has made it hard for some to see that the terrain is diverse and not one is the same. So, required for each one's experience is a dress code that you own and you can see. Once you have discovered it, it's a revelation that's yours to keep. Yours to keep, yours to reflect on, yours to keep for the next action. For you and I must survive. Dress for the workplace, whether ice, rain, or sunshine. Dress for the workplace with virtues that you and I may thrive. Thank you.
Oh, amazing, Banji. Oh, I thank you. Thank you for being you, and thank you for being incredibly kind those many years ago when we met. And I'm so glad you're here today. Rob, please come in. And by the way, Banji, I did not know you were a poet, so I've just been flabbergasted by today. Rob, please come in.
Yeah, Banji, hit me up with that poem, please. Email me. Let's talk. Great stuff. Loving that. Romain, thank you for all of your sharing. I've already told you I'm in the queue for that book. So wherever and whenever I can buy a copy and support your next steps, please let me know. If you haven't already, Remain, check out reachsociety.com. We'd love to have you there. I've said it already, but Mevish, Lydia, thank you. Again, if I can support anything that you're doing going forward, let me know. I want to thank everyone on the call. My heart is full. Loving all of you for being here and for leaning in and for being present throughout. I scrolled them down once we started. I'm going to go back to my 3 C's out of this conversation. Cathartic, because of the healing it offers. Critical, because of the prescription available to us via critical race theory. And if you're not already familiar, folks, with the brilliant work of Dr. Nicola Rollock, she authored The Racial Code. She also wrote something called The Color of Class. Check out Dr. Nicola Rollock. And finally, compassion and the playground that we may find ourselves in, with forgiving hearts in those safe spaces to be all that we are capable of. I'm going to close with a quote that's attributed to the superhero that lives with us all in Nelson Mandela. He said that winning my battles makes me stronger. Sharing our stories makes us wiser. I leave you with that. God bless you all and stay strong.
Thank you, Rob. By the way, a lot of people loved your t-shirt. So if you want to share, you know, where you bought it from on the link on the chat, then please do. But I think a lot of people loved your t-shirt.
My sister got me this. My biological sister got me this. Her name is Patsy Neal. She's a 42-year-old serving civil servant. She's 62 years old. She won't mind me saying that. And she gets me t-shirts she knows I'll enjoy. And I love this one. I'm thinking of getting it as a tattoo, folks. What do you think? I'm joking. I'm joking.
There's nothing wrong with it. You can have it on your back. Why not?
Why not?
So just in closing, I want to first and foremost say thank you so much for everyone that has joined this call. It's been amazing. I think at one point we had like 85 people on this call. So I'm considering that as a win. The fact that even we've still got 64 people right now and we've passed 2 o'clock. I am absolutely thrilled. My heart is full. You guys are amazing. I hope you've taken a lot from this. And let's continue to have these conversations. And to my speakers, thank you so much. When this idea came about back in summer and I reached out to you, I love the fact that you just immediately said, of course I'll help you. So for you, for all 3 of you, you have been amazing. And Lydia is someone that we met again early in the year. And Lydia, you have been a great support for me. This wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you, if I'm honest. So thank you so much for all of you. Remain, just to kind of say this, your slides were brilliant. And I just to let the audience know, audience participants, you guys, you great people, and we will share Remain's slides with you, and some great there's a lot of resources that have been shared today, so we've captured it all and we'll send it in an email to you all. But thank you, stay blessed, thank you so much. And I want to give a shout out to Sharon. Actually, Sharon is the editor, the key person that put this amazing magazine together. I love it. So Sharon, for those that don't know Sharon, can I just be naughty and just get you to come on screen? If you're there. Come on screen, Sharon.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I met Sharon.
I'm not coming on screen because this is my admin day, and I'm not.
Don't come on screen. But Sharon, thank you so much for an amazing magazine and just for being here.
Oh, pleasure. It was fantastic
Brilliant.
session. Well done to everyone. I've been, as you can see, I've been filling up the chat with all my comments and running commentary. So it's been brilliant. I even postponed lunch to listen to the end of this. That's how important this was for me.
That's amazing.
And anyone who knows me will know that's a sacrifice. So, you know, that's a win right there for you.
Amazing. So great to hear. So I'm going to let you all, you know, leave. But thank you so much. And yeah, stay well and see you soon and enjoy the rest of Black History Month.
Thank you, everyone.